Today on Lynn's Warriors, we bring you a front row view of the fight too many tech companies hope you'll ignore. Our guest is Annie Chestnut Tutor, policy analyst at the Heritage Foundation Center for Technology and Human Person. Annie has just released a blistering new report exposing how the filters parents rely on fail, how tech platforms skirt age checks, and how children remain exposed and unprotected. We'll dig into some hard questions. Why are our kids still vulnerable despite all the talk going on? What is Washington doing or failing to do about it? How can parents, teachers, and everyday citizens stand as the warriors our children need? This is Lynn's Warriors, where protecting kids is more than a promise, it's our mission. The website is heritage.org, and I'm going to say welcome Annie Chestnut Tutor to the Warriors.
Thank you for having me on today, Lynn.
I mean, absolutely. I'm going to start off with you are a warrior because you wrote this new report. It's a parent survey, online filters and blocking software still only work sometimes. Now, I'm going through this a couple of different times reading it, and your report argues that filters and blocking software still only work sometimes. So fill us in about all of this and what's the most alarming gap that parents don't realize when it comes to these tools. Because I think, Annie, when they hear, filters and blocking software, they automatically think, okay, my child is safe.
Yes, they do. So I think as technology has advanced in many ways, that there's probably also an assumption that then, filtering and blocking must be much better. And it may be, but the last study, so before we did this study, the last study I come across was in 2017 in the UK that found that even with the use of filters, that children still became exposed to obscene content. And I realized that we really needed newer information because there was kind of this assumption that, that was 8 years ago, and that was also another country. And as I've been working on different policy proposals to add additional safeguards online for from social media to online pornography, of course, I get pushback about additional regulations, or is this overly restrictive, or why is this necessary? So it was really trying to get at the root of the problem and provide some evidence for why just the voluntary use of blocking and filtering software is not sufficient for parents. And unfortunately, this survey did reveal that that was still the case. We surveyed 1,000 parents across the country from diverse backgrounds, affiliations, and these parents all said that they did use filters or blocking software to some degree. So in one of the questions, 70% of parents said that their kids' devices did have filters in place. And while 9 out of 10 of them, so about 90%, felt pretty confident about using the filters. Another question revealed that, and that actually in practice, about 50% of them said that it rarely worked or worked only some of the time. And so they were aware of their kids still coming across inappropriate content.
Now, Annie, I had all these questions lined up for you, and you just saying that, I have like 50 more questions. I hear 2017, I admit I get crazy because with all of this technology, right? Everything we know about kids, the internet, digital safety, pornography. Even though it's another country, why 8 years ago, Annie, I feel like that's like another world 8 years ago. We have learned, today, I feel like in the last 6 months, every day it's something new with technology. That can't hold. We can't go on studies from 2017. So good for you for doing this and bringing awareness to all of that. And I'll just leave it at that because I'll derail everything because I have so many. Let me go on to my next question. I want to talk about, it's really tough let's talk about legislation because you talked about pushback. You know what? Where's the pushback on protecting our kids? Do you know what I mean? About their privacy, about all of that. Let's talk about age verification because I'm here in New York. There's talk of it. It's happening in different states and things like that. Um, why is it so hard about age verification on devices, on platforms? Do you think this is the only solution? Because we always get that same narrative,
Mhm.
privacy, invasion, that same old story that I am so sick and tired of. Okay. Do you think this is the only way to really go, like with age verification?
Mhm. I think it's the best solution when it comes to online pornography, unless we live in a world where it doesn't exist, which
Not happening.
I would be in favor of, but yeah, not realistic. I do think it's the best avenue because if you think about it, in person, we do have age checks, and we already have decided as a society long before now that children are treated differently than adults. They don't have the same rights. They're various age minimums.
Right.
We aren't letting kids go around driving. Children cannot enter in most bars. Like bars are often 18 and over or 21 and over. They can't enter into a strip club or even like an adult sex shop. So you have to be 18 or older. And if you looked younger, the person working there would have to ask for your ID. And we've just had this loophole existing online that the internet is free for all and there's no age minimums. And the status quo has just been clicking a box, just saying,
Yeah.
yes, I'm 18 or older, or maybe typing in a birth year, but there's um, no accountability on the platform. They aren't actually checking or verifying it. So we do need that means online. And fortunately, we do have it, and it can be done anonymously. It isn't uh, you don't necessarily for adults. So usually, unfortunately, the pushback is that protecting kids is not worth any sort of burden on adults. That's what um, you know many people who oppose this. That's the position that they take. Um, but fortunately, the Supreme Court this summer they upheld one of these age verification laws in Texas, and the court ruled that adults do not have a First Amendment right to avoid age verification, and that it was only, incidentally burdensome. So this is allowing Texas's law and 24 other states
Mhm.
their laws to move forward. Ultimately, we need a solution on the federal level because there are children that live in all 50 states, and I'm glad that half the states have done something, but ultimately, we need it across the country.
Now, I'll say, Annie, the question I get on a daily basis is why is all of this allowed to happen? And I have to always go
Mhm.
back to what is boring for our warriors, for the public, but is that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act allowing, bottom line, kind of these platforms are billboards or newsstands, and they're just not held responsible for third party content. Any news from where you sit on sunsetting that, doing something with that? Because I am tired of that standing in the way of a lot of things.
Mhm. Yeah, you're right. I absolutely agree, particularly on social media platforms. And actually, part of Section 230, so it does provide them some immunity for content that is posted, by users saying that they can't be held responsible. But it also provides them with protection for they can't be held responsible if they choose to remove that content or they can't be um, prosecuted because they removed obscene content, but they aren't taking that measure
Right.
often. So they have that carrot there, but there doesn't really seem to be a stick that's saying like, no, you have to remove if it's like obscene content or um, CSAM or like revenge porn. Until recently, the Take It Down Act that will help enforce force those takedown measures. But ultimately, yes, I agree. We do need to remove Section 230 liability. There needs to be reform. And I have there, Senator Graham in the past has introduced legislation for sunsetting it for 2 years. And I have heard, like, I know there's interest from members to do so again. And it really, and this sort of proposal would push the tech companies to actually come to the table, because they don't want to lose their immunity. They're otherwise, they'll just be um, riddled with lawsuits. So, but if there's a sunset, it would actually push them to negotiating to the table to say, okay, well, what is a workable policy? Because maybe there is some degrees of liability that is reasonable, but it can't be this across the board any longer. It can't be that they have zero accountability anymore.
No, I mean, our parents are so overwhelmed. Guardians, I like to say that, Annie, guardians in New York, we have a lot of where I am. Parents, the families are made up of different dynamics these days. We have a lot of
Mhm.
grandparents raising kids. We have a lot of older siblings raising kids. So I like to add in when I say parents, but everybody's overwhelmed. They tell me it's like getting hit over the head with a hammer every day with everything happening, and they don't have time. They depend on, they think big tech, if they're telling us something is safe or that use this device or use this app, they just go along with that. And that's what we're always trying to break through with knowledge and resources and things like that. Um, I want to talk. I have so many questions for you, but I want to get into, because this is something I don't think we talk enough about. Truly, is pornography. Because even I didn't know, Annie, until a couple of years ago, and I was studying things and talking to a lot of people and healthcare, specialists and experts, that heavy social media use affects the brain, and exposure can actually rewire a child's brain. I don't think people understand that. They still think, maybe, I know we're a family show, but it's just like two people having sex, and we know from our work we do at the Warriors that there are horrific categories of abuse, things kids are seeing and not even looking for it. Sometimes these dangerous algorithms feed them, or you can do everything right with your child and their friend, shows them something on their device, their phone. So, how urgent is all of this? Explain this a little bit, because I really don't think we talk about this enough, and how it really can, seeing these images and watching them over and over. It's a true addiction. We talk to people, my age even, and they said they saw things when they were young, truly became addicted, but now we have kids being fed this content. So, what do you want to say about all of this pornography?
Yes, it is increasingly disturbing. It's not just a Playboy magazine, from the 50s, or like, pinup pictures. It's very, what people call hardcore pornography, increasingly disturbing acts. And they're more platforms. And it is increasingly also seeping onto social media platforms, as I was starting to get into a little bit earlier. And this is with, OnlyFans is now like a very popular platform. And what we're seeing increasingly is that a lot of those content creators will create accounts on social media, and to kind of entice users to kind of advertise their content on social media, and then they'll have in their bio a link to the more obscene content. And there's nothing really blocking right now that those that kind of content being featured to kids if they're on social media, because it's all recommendation based algorithm. It's feeding content based on user behavior. A lot of this is fed even more if you're a user that is identified as in your account that you're a male. Then this is like pushed to you even more, because they think, oh, this is what males want to be served. And so I know some guys that choose not to have Instagram or social media, because even if they're not, it just like comes to them, and they
Yes.
don't want to see that. they don't want to be tempted or exposed in that way. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of education that needs to be done. Like parents need to be aware of this. But as phones are more, the access online is more pervasive, it's not fair to just say that it's really up to the parents, because even the best, well-intended parent, they're not over their child's shoulder every second. And even if they are, that doesn't really stop something from coming up.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out because we work with a lot of parents across the country, um, where their kids, especially teenage boys, have been victims of sextortion.
Mhm.
And these are parents who bravely speak out now. I don't know how they do it, Annie, but they do it because it's their therapy, and they do it to warn others that they don't want this to happen to anybody else's child or family. Because when something like this happens, it's a whole family unit that's affected. Um, and so I want to ask you, okay, they cannot, and many of them have said we did it, we talked open and honestly, which is another thing we have to learn. No embarrassment about these issues. Kids are seeing things anyway. Just look, I'm in the middle of New York City on billboards. I mean, you see, I want to say like, next to naked women. So kids are just seeing this. This is being thrown at them, whether it's entertainment. I started years ago in the music business. The music business is certainly sexual. It's online. It seems like the kids are surrounded by this sexual content, no matter where they turn. And the parents have always said to me, we tried most of them. We talked to them. We thought they knew, and still their children were affected. So it's not about the parents. Why should they be burdened? Big tech has to step up and start doing, and our government as well. That leads me into Kids Online Safety Act, COSA. What do you think about this? We also last week had the Guard Act, uh, introduced Josh Hawley. I think it's the only way we can go. We have to have some legislation because, again, parents, caregivers can't keep up with what's going on. What are your thoughts about all this?
Mhm. Yes, I'm also very supportive of those bills. So the Kids Online Safety Act, so we talked a lot earlier about age verification. The Kids Online Safety Act kind of targets from a different angle. It puts more limitations on the design features. So, what I was talking about, like the content being fed to users, in such a way that like keeps them on the platform, keeps them engaged, and eventually, really creates more of this addiction. The Kids Online Safety Act would put restrictions on that, on those design features for social media accounts for kids. And so I think that is a great way, so that if we are going to live in a world where like kids do have social media, then this will make it more appropriate, and less harmful, and removing some of the more like deceptive tactics that platforms use. It does require the platforms to also be more transparent about their settings and allow the parents to more easily um, accessorize or change settings. And right now, I think parents like have to be really on the hunt for it, and just like that. That's something they want to do. It's not easy. It's not intuitive. It's so interesting. It's like that social media, like big tech. It's like the one industry that we've just kind of accepted. There's really no like customer service. Like, if you want to get a
Nothing.
hold or like report anything, it's near impossible. And with like any other industry that I can think of, that isn't the case. And like, why is that okay in the norm with big tech? So I think the Kids Online Safety Act would change that. And then the Guard Act, that is targeting the chatbots, because that, I guess that's kind of
They're
the
here.
next
They're here.
innovation past
Yeah.
social media, is having these online chatbots and online companions, or like friends, No, they're not human, and they also they're trained on these companies. They just scrape the internet. I mean, it was uncovered maybe a month ago that Meta had scraped 82,000 gigabytes of pornography to train its AI companions. And Mark Zuckerberg said a couple months ago that he acknowledged like a loneliness epidemic, and that people on average had fewer friends in the past. And instead of more cultural or societal, okay, like how do we change it, like how do we be more engaged, or how do we have more in-person interactions or improve our community, his solution is that that people would just have more AI chatbots, that those would be their friends. But we've seen, I mean, probably some of the parents that you talk to about, they have had children who have fell victim to these chatbots, that have like encouraged suicide, and some of the kids ended up committing suicide. So when Senator Hawley introduced the GUARD Act, and it was bipartisan, they had several parents speak whose children had either committed suicide or harmed themselves at the encouragement of one of their AI friends.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's point out that all of this work is bipartisan. It belongs to no political party. All of the legislation introduced bipartisan. Everybody, or I thought everybody could get on board, like with all of this. I want to just go back to COSA and point out it puts the duty of care. You were talking about this on the big tech company. They have a duty of care in developing these products. And also something I want to say, I want to add, Annie, because I get pushback about this all the time. That argument, but we know big tech has lots of lobbyists. They have lots of money in their PR, wallets and all that. I constantly get, okay, it's shutting down searching for things. No, it doesn't shut anything down. It shuts down. The big tech platforms cannot have these algorithms. A child, a teen can search for anything they want, because we get that a lot here in New York with the LGBTQ community. Like they won't be able to search information. Yes, they will if they choose. This is for all children's safety, for all teens, for all people. So they can search for anything they want, but they're not going to be fed the dangerous algorithms. So that's that. Now, I was so happy, Annie, because I was actually in the Rose Garden for the Take It Down Act when it was signed, and I thought, oh, this is a move forward. And then literally about 2 days later, there was like this unleashing about AI chatbots. Like I couldn't escape it. It was all I was being flooded with. I'm very concerned about this artificial intelligence. Again, you pointed out AI chatbots, companions are machines, everybody. They are not real. They're not your friends. They are not real. Everybody needs to tell their kids they are not real. Let's talk a little bit about AI. What do you want to share with us? Because right now, I think this is the only big concern kind of thing in all this digital safety space. I don't know where it's going. I don't think many other people do either.
Yeah, and so OpenAI started as a nonprofit, and there's at the beginnings, it was more like, okay, we wouldn't develop AI, but we want it to be like good for humanity. It has since, and OpenAI is the company that runs ChatGPT, so probably the most well-known AI chatbot. And they have recently announced that they're now for profit. Yes. They also announced that, so they used to have prohibitions against any obscene content. And Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, he has since announced that they're going to start allowing obscene content and in conversations. So, I mean, that's terribly alarming. And they have said that they're going to, create guardrails for kids. Some of them have said that they're going to start experimenting with age assurance or age verification. But there's no accountability without. This is why, and so many people would say, well, oh great, well if they're voluntarily doing this, then we don't need the government to get involved. And I probably would have taken that position in the past too. But the problem is there's there's still no accountability, and that's why we do need regulations to oversee this, because when they fail our kids, and when you have um, children committing suicide or uh, other other acts, then they need to be held responsible for that. Um, so I do have a lot of concerns with AI, the chatbots especially. I mean, there are other good uses of AI. Like automating some tasks, or improving like research, or getting at more information online. But the chatbots, that is not a useful, or it's not like a value add, I would say, to our society, and it just preys on the vulnerable, and our children are certainly vulnerable.
Yeah. Let me ask you two. I have two things. I've gotten pushback from lawyers when I'm talking to them, about this duty of care. And they all tell me the same thing. They don't even know each other. They think it's too broad.
For the Kids Online Safety Act.
Yes, I'm sorry, for Kids Online Safety Act. I'm
Mhm.
thinking as I'm talking to you. Um, do you want to address that at all?
Yeah. Well, I don't think so. I think that, and I do know that the bill that was reintroduced this Congress, they did make some changes
Right.
to, um, take into account some concerns, and I think they may have even tweaked the duty of care language.
Mhm.
But I think where people think it's broad, they it's they're also thinking of it as pertaining to what content is posted. But again, it's not. It's about the design features and how content is fed to users. And so that's always a point I have to stress, because a lot of people think that, oh, if um, there's content that makes me anxious, then that's that's not going to be allowed. But it's not that. It's about um, the like psychological tactics through like the design features of like feeding. So like if you see something about depression, then all they start then it starts feeding you a lot of content about depression, and then that maybe exacerbates those feelings that someone would have, because they're like, oh, I'm only fed like depression content. And so that would be what it's just about, how they're feeding content.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know that children and teens, their minds are, vulnerable. They're developing minds. And if you see all day, content about eating disorders or depression, or even fashion, Annie, like girls we've dealt with compare themselves, if they keep seeing, as an example, like Kardashians, because they've told me this, like beautiful homes and cars and all kinds of clothes and makeup, and they don't have that, or they don't have the money for that. They become
Mhm.
so depressed, yet they keep scrolling and looking and looking. So again, it's about this content being fed to our kids. Um, I
Mhm.
want to finish up with you with, if you could talk directly to parents right now, or guardians, educators, what would three actionable steps be that you want them to really think about? Because when we talk about all this, it's the kids, the children, then we've got parents and guardians, then we've got educators, because our federal government, the administration has said we want K through 12 to be empowered by AI. I'm still, Annie, trying to think what that may look like. because
Mhm.
we know the national report cards came out fairly recently, and K through 12, they're failing, science, math, reading. We want to help and empower our kids and tutor them and make them stronger. How, what are your thoughts on this? How is this going to help them? Because already we have teachers telling us for the last year, a fifth grader's handing in an essay and she's like, I know he didn't write that. That's chat
Mhm.
GPT. Thoughts on all of this? Because this is actually very scary to me. I see the
Mhm.
administration. I understand it. We want to be global leaders in America of everything. I get it. But this component, we can be global leaders, but we also have to have safety for kids and families. And again, and our educators, this is unleashed on them. They don't know what all this is unless they have training about all of this education. What do you think?
Mhm. Yeah, well, for parents, I would say delay providing personal devices as long as late as you can for kids. And when you start out, start with something like an Apple Watch. My one of my nieces has a watch and only her parents can call or text her. And I think they might have a couple other phone numbers, like a regular babysitter or a grandparent.
Right.
And then if because she's reached an age where she's a lot more independent. She goes to friends' houses. She has little jobs, taking care of neighbors' plants, and
Oh,
so they can reach her. But she doesn't. She can't even. She doesn't have her phone numbers of friends. She isn't. Doesn't have like internet browsing. And then I've had some other nieces and nephews that they eventually got it looks like an iPhone, like it's, a touch screen, but they don't have apps. They have limited contacts.
there are companies that
Um,
make it looks like an iPhone and it looks like an Apple Watch. So the kids don't feel left out, but they don't
yeah.
have internet or the parent programs it for them. So there are devices out
Mhm.
there, companies that are doing this.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a flip phone, although that is, I think,
I
actually
miss
coming
my flip
back a little
phone.
bit. Yeah, I think more people are turning to that, but it doesn't have to be. It can look like an iPhone, so they don't have to. It's not immediately obvious.
Right.
But so once they're at a point where maybe you need to be able to reach them, and perhaps get them that. But um, otherwise, yeah, don't allow them to have social media and other apps on their phone. And for a lot of schools and states are requiring phone bans in schools. And I am very supportive of that because then at least, for 8 hours a day, you know that your kid isn't being distracted by social media. I've even heard that it's led to less decreased bullying because there aren't these like opportunities to be filming other students. And I think talking to other parents, because I think that is often maybe the hardest, is the parent just being like afraid of their child being left alone. There are some great resources if you're not convinced or if you're trying to convince your friends. The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt really does a good job laying out the problem. The Tech Exit by Claire Morel. She really talks about how it is possible in today's day and age to have a phone free, screen free childhood. Screen Strong is a curriculum that also is about like eliminating or limiting screen time among children. And um, oh, and yeah, last and then yeah, go to your school board meetings. Consider running for a school
100%.
board. Because yeah, I am concerned about AI in education. I say to people that I'm for tech education.
Mhm.
There being like designated computer classes, like learning about AI, like other computer courses, but I'm not for ed tech, which is more AI, tech being like a means of which kids are learning. And you have to keep in mind that a lot of these ed tech, ed tech companies, they are for profit companies.
Right.
And um, with so I think that there need to be a lot of questions about, okay, what is being allowed in school and why? How are they measuring outcomes? why is this better than other more traditional methods? And I think that parents need to they have a right to um, opt out of these. I don't think that schools should just be determining, okay, this is the platform that they're all going to use. I think that parents should have a say. And technically, with the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, parents are required to give their consent for any data collection of their kids 12 and younger. So that needs to be enforced, and schools shouldn't be making these decisions for kids, and parents should have a say. So I think whether it's talking to your schools, we did write a comment, we as in the Heritage Foundation, myself and then one of my colleagues in our education department, raising some concerns with there was a grant proposal for using existing grant funds for AI in education. And, we think there needs to be conditions with that funding. It shouldn't just be free money given to schools and to ed tech platforms. There needs to be checks. We need to ensure there isn't fraud, waste, and that we aren't going to end up harming kids with any tools that are selected.
Yeah, and we need transparency. And we've seen, Annie, I mean, we question all of this. We're talking about all this. So this is great. Like there's hope. More people are aware. You're doing excellent work. Others are sounding the alarm. We have parents because history has shown us how big tech has acted. So we have to ask these questions now. And also, I really think, Annie, 2025 going into 2026, one must become involved, a parent in your child. You got to go to the schools, ask what the curriculum is. This is your right, because I was talking to a lot of parents at the beginning of the school year, and I'd be like, do you sign off on tech? Oh yeah, we just check the boxes, whatever. Because at the time I was working on Gemini, if you're familiar with Gemini. And it's not just Gemini, I don't want to pick on them, but these predators are on every app and getting kids to, meet them in the DMs, the direct messages. So you really have to be involved with all of this also on the school level, because a lot of them were signing off on Gemini and they didn't even know, which were allowing during the school day a predator could easily access through their DMs the child. So again, it sounds so basic, but raising awareness, talking about it, having some resources at your fingertips, which I'm going to link everything extensively in the body of this video for you. And also Jonathan Haidt, I saw a presentation, and then I just heard he was at Heritage recently also.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you know why I love that, Annie? Because it's really, and your work as well. When I have stats and studies that I can refer to, like people can't argue with me when I can pull out, the numbers and pull out. And when I saw he was here in New York, we had a mental health awareness day not long ago. Lots of kids, I was happy to see. The direct correlation, you may have seen the same presentation because they were maybe a week apart. It was recently. The advent of the iPhone, and then how everything started happening with
Mhm.
I think it was 2007, the advent of the iPhone. Everything started for them slipping, depression, education, their sleep, just all of this stuff. So it's time to reclaim. And the good news is a lot of young people are fighting back. You pointed out, even the schools, bell to bell, we have it here in New York. And Annie, where the pushback came, not from the kids, surprisingly enough, the parents were like, no, I need access, all day. The teachers are very happy here. I ask them all the time. They're like, no, it's working out. So delay is the way, you pointed out.
Mhm.
Devices that don't have, they look like an iPhone, Apple Watch, they don't have internet capability perhaps, but it really starts with discussion as well with your child. Final thoughts. Give us some final thoughts. Anything?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that Haidt presentation. He was here last week,
You
October
probably saw
29th.
what I saw, I bet.
Yeah, yeah, if not the same, certainly overlap, but he did a great job. And so we work with, Heritage, we're a conservative organization, but we also work with, anyone who's willing to. I think he said this, and I agree. He said that the tech issue and like protecting kids online, it might be the last like truly bipartisan issue,
I think so.
because we work with organizations who are conservative like us, and then others who are more progressive or moderate. But yeah, that was a great presentation. And then I spoke on a panel after, and I believe it's on our website, perhaps our events page or a YouTube
I'll find it,
page.
link it.
And that was about, yeah, the effect of screens on children's mental, emotional, and physical health, even because, kids, instead of playing outside, instead of being independent, learning and growing, they're just behind their devices. Um, and for some families, it's like the phone's the babysitter, but not a very good babysitter, because it's like the babysitter that takes the child to the strip club. And so yeah, I hope some of your listeners tune into that or look into some of
Oh,
the
I'll
sources.
find it. I do extensive linking in the body of videos,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
also I love that he pointed out, we're afraid to let our kids go outside these days, and
Mhm.
rightfully so. He probably said this in your presentation as well or on your panel. But we hand them these devices that, I've always been saying it's like opening your front door. You don't lock it. You let anybody come in from around the world. Why do we do that? Yet I,
Mhm.
I have friends that said, no, little Johnny can't go in the backyard and climb a tree. They'll fall out and hurt themselves. you
Mhm.
know, but you're allowing strangers to dictate what effects for the rest of their lives, I dare say, with all of this content. Well, Annie Chestnut Tutor, we have a lot more to talk about. Promise me you'll come back, because
I
this is
would
an
love to.
ongoing issue that we need to just keep everybody aware. We got to keep on it. We got to keep chipping away. We cannot let the predators win. Again, I will link everything in the body of the video. The website is heritage.org. Excellent, excellent work. When I started my work, I would get off the train, walk up my little hill on the left, and go to Heritage and go to presentations where I could learn things. I got to get back to that, because my best education, believe it or not, came from Heritage.
Mhm.
I want to continue. I've just been busy lately.
We would love to have you.
Different people talking and things like that. I really learned
Mhm.
so many issues. So we'll be really promoting heritage.org a lot and talking about it. I'm going to call you a true scholar, Annie Chestnut Tutor. You're telling truth. You're documenting danger, which I think is so important. You're giving parents and policymakers facts, because we need facts. Always fighting back with facts and truth. And it's not just research. Your current, report. It's really a roadmap, and we have to keep, Annie, making everybody aware there's a real threat. I used to not want to scare people. I think we have to scare them, Annie, because this is
Yeah.
a national security threat. These are our future American adults, our future leaders, and look what's happening. So we have to take all of this into account, and also the moral compass. I'm going a lot on that, Annie, lately, because there's no reason for a lot of things happening. That's for another program.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of evil going on. So we have to step it up, because there's a lot of good people, in our country, and really show the kids and mentor them and show them the goodness, right? Because they're watching all these bad things happening. So I want to thank you, Annie, from the bottom of my heart, for taking the time. Definitely, you're coming back. You're stuck with me now, because none of this basically is even political. It's really human rights abuses. I'm going to say moral again. It's about our families and about our precious kids. So the report is parents survey, online filters, and blocking software still only works sometimes. I will have that again, Annie, in the body of the video. Please come back. I'm going to beg you all the time. We need good information, and you're providing that. And I want to say to you, Annie Chestnut Tutor, you are a warrior.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks.
much, Lynn.
And we'll speak again soon.
Thank you.